I banned my stepdaughter from coming home because of her attitude towards my terminally ill husband. Recently, I came across a distressing statistic. About 75% of women who care for terminally ill husbands experience significant stress and emotional exhaustion. It made me wonder if I could find the strength to cope with a situation that seems hopeless. Hello, Reddit. I'm Emily, 45 years old. Today I want to share my story, which began a few months ago and has been a true test of my emotional and physical strength. I'm married to Thomas, the man I love more than anything in the world. Our life changed drastically in recent years when Thomas was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Every day, he fights through pain and discomfort, and I strive to be his greatest support. It seemed like we could handle it together, but everything changed when my stepdaughter Laura became a part of our lives after Thomas divorced her mother. Laura is Thomas's only daughter, and I expected her to support us during this difficult time. Instead, Laura started behaving as if her father's illness didn't concern her. She only comes to us when she needs something and ignores his needs and pain. Her behavior tears my heart apart, as I'm the only one trying to ensure Thomas's comfort. One of the first days after Laura returned home, she showed extreme indifference to her father's condition. When I tried to talk to her about it, she simply brushed it off and said she had other things to do. I felt that our family life, which was once full of love and support, was starting to crumble. I became more withdrawn and began spending most of my time caring for Thomas, ignoring my own needs and emotions. Laura often visited, but never stayed long. She made it clear that she didn't care how we spent our time together or how difficult things were for us. Her behavior and lack of support became a heavy emotional burden for me. I tried to find the strength to stay positive and support Thomas, but the situation became increasingly difficult. I started to feel torn between my duties as a wife and the need to maintain stability in my relationship with Laura. It was a true emotional challenge that I couldn't handle calmly. Every day, I felt more and more that Laura was destroying our family space with her negativity and irresponsibility. All my attempts to talk to her were in vain. Sometimes, it felt like I was trying to be the perfect wife and stepmother, but it was draining me more and more each day. The internal struggle became my constant reality. I began to lose confidence in my ability to cope with the situation. I felt that my efforts were meaningless and that I could no longer withstand the tension. Laura continued her behavior, and even when she finally stayed home for a while, her indifference towards her father was apparent. She didn't even try to understand how hard it was for him. I tried to handle it on my own, but began to feel isolated and exhausted. I didn't know how to maintain a balance between helping Thomas and trying to maintain a relationship with Laura. Each day seemed harder, and I started to think I couldn't continue like this. All my attempts to find positive aspects in the situation seemed futile. My nights became sleepless. I constantly thought about how to better handle the situation, but my thoughts always returned to Laura and her indifference. I felt like my life was falling apart. I tried to find the strength to keep fighting, but Laura only intensified my sense of hopelessness. My relationship with Thomas became strained because, although he understood my difficulties, he was burdened by his own painful condition and couldn't provide me with the support I needed. I tried to talk to Laura about how her behavior was affecting us all, but she only became more aggressive. I began to feel that I couldn't find the right words to express my feelings. Laura even started to cause scenes and mock the fact that I was spending my time caring for Thomas instead of dealing with real issues. It was unbearable. I wondered if my expectations of Laura were too high, but when I saw her indifference, I felt she didn't understand how important it was to support the family during these times. Over time, I noticed that even attempts to seek help from friends and family didn't bring relief. I felt I was in a state of loneliness and despair. Gradually, I began to lose control over my emotions. I realized that I needed to find a way to cope with this stress before it completely destroyed my life. I felt that, even though I was trying to be strong for Thomas, my inner world was collapsing. Laura continued to exacerbate the situation, and I started to think I could no longer endure it. Each day became a difficult test for me. I couldn't find rest or a moment of peace, as the issues with Laura and caring for Thomas consumed all my thoughts. I felt I needed to find a way to cope with the situation, but everything seemed hopeless. Laura continued to destroy everything I tried to preserve. My relationship with Thomas became even more complicated because I couldn't find support from either him or Laura. I began to feel isolated and frustrated. Every attempt to talk to Laura about her attitude towards her father ended in arguments. I started to lose hope that the situation could be resolved peacefully. My psychological stress began to affect my health. I felt I could no longer keep everything under control, and my emotions started to erupt at unexpected moments. I began to think that my life might never return to normal. Laura continued to become more and more irritating, and I started to feel that I could no longer endure her behavior. I found myself thinking more and more about how to handle the situation, but no solution seemed right. I was afraid that I would only make things worse. My internal frustration and stress began to manifest in my behavior. I became withdrawn and irritable, even when I didn't want to be. This affected my relationship with Thomas. I often felt that it was all meaningless. My efforts to make Thomas's life comfortable seemed futile due to Laura's attitude towards us. I started looking for ways out of this situation, but it seemed that all my efforts only worsened the situation. Laura continued to jeopardize our family life. Every day, I tried to find the strength to keep caring for Thomas and deal with the issues with Laura, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. My life turned into an endless cycle of stress and uncertainty. I tried to stay strong, but I felt that I could no longer handle everything. I knew I needed to find a way to manage my emotions and the situation, but I didn't see a clear solution. My attempts to change things seemed futile. I realized I needed to find help and support, but I didn't know where to start. Laura continued to threaten my life, and I was on the brink of emotional collapse. So I decided to share my story here on Reddit, hoping to find understanding and support. Maybe someone here has experienced something similar and can offer advice or simply share their thoughts. Hello again, Reddit. It's really important for me to share my experiences with you, as the past few months have been a true test. My life has become like a constant battle, and I'm trying to find a way out of this difficult situation. As I mentioned before, Thomas, my husband, is seriously ill with cancer. His condition is worsening, and I am fully dedicated to caring for him. Every day is a struggle, and I'm trying to maintain my strength to be a support for him. On top of this, Laura, my stepdaughter, continues to show indifference to the situation. Not only does she not help, but she's also becoming increasingly irritating and aggressive. This is causing me more and more stress and frustration. One day, after an especially tough day when Thomas went through another severe round of chemotherapy, Laura came into the house with a completely indifferent expression. She didn't even ask how we were doing and immediately started talking about her work problems. I felt my patience running out. I tried to explain to her how important it is to support her father at this time, but her reaction was completely different from what I expected. She simply said she didn't have time for family problems. My emotions reached a critical point. I tried to stay calm and constructive, but Laura's indifference only intensified my anger and stress. I felt that our relationship was becoming more and more strained. When I tried to discuss this issue with Thomas, he looked so exhausted that he couldn't offer me any support. This intensified my sense of loneliness in this situation. I decided that something needed to change and sought help from a therapist. I hoped that this professional support would help me cope with the pressure and find a way to resolve conflicts with Laura effectively. The therapist helped me understand that I needed to find a way to maintain my own boundaries and not let the situation with Laura spiral negatively. This gave me some clarity, but didn't solve all the problems. I began working on finding a balance between caring for Thomas and interacting with Laura. It turned out to be much more challenging than I had imagined, as Laura became increasingly unsympathetic. Attempts to communicate with Laura repeatedly ended in arguments. Every conversation ended with aggressive remarks from her side, which only fueled the fire. Laura began constantly complaining about how I was occupied with caring for Thomas and demanding more attention for herself. Her selfish attitude only heightened the conflicts between us. I tried to find compromises, but each attempt ended in even greater misunderstandings. She continued to jeopardize our relationship and make life even harder. I felt that I no longer had the strength to fight for harmony in the family. My emotional exhaustion reached its peak, and I began to question whether there was anything else I could change. One evening, while Thomas was lying in bed, I sat beside him, watching him and thinking about how difficult things were for me. I couldn't understand why Laura couldn't show any compassion. My need for understanding and support grew even stronger, and I began to realize that Laura simply couldn't or didn't want to help. This realization hit me hard. I started to think more about my own feelings and how they affected my ability to support Thomas. Each day, I felt increasing stress and exhaustion. My attempts to find a way out of the situation were unsuccessful. I continued to live in constant tension and struggle with the emotional problems arising from Laura's behavior. I began to feel trapped. My efforts to care for Thomas and improve my relationship with Laura seemed futile. My friends and relatives also began to notice how I was changing. They asked about my problems, but I didn't know how to convey the full weight of the situation to them. Laura continued to destroy everything I tried to preserve. Her negative attitude became the main source of my stress. I tried to talk to Laura again about her behavior, but she refused to listen. She was stubborn and unwilling to acknowledge her part in the situation. My attempts to be understanding and patient proved useless. Laura continued to push my nerves to the limit and create conflicts. I became more closed off and withdrawn. My emotional exhaustion started to affect all areas of my life. I felt that I no longer had the strength to fight. My relationship with Laura and my life in general began to crumble. One day, I decided that I needed to find new strategies to cope with this situation. I started looking for information on how to better cope with similar issues. I found several resources on managing stress and recognizing signs of burnout. This helped me understand that my feelings were normal and that I was not alone in my difficulties. At the same time, I tried to remain optimistic and support Thomas. I realized that I needed to find a way to handle the situation so that it wouldn't completely ruin my life. Laura continued to jeopardize our relationship, and I decided to consult a family therapist. I hoped that this help might make a difference. The family therapist helped me realize that I needed to set my boundaries and not let Laura destroy my life. This was an important step towards change. I tried to apply the advice I received in practice. I started to express my feelings and demands more clearly, hoping for positive changes in my relationship with Laura. My tension decreased a bit, but dealing with Laura remained challenging. I continued to work on myself and tried to find new ways to handle the situation. At the same time, I continued to care for Thomas and support him emotionally. My efforts did not go unnoticed, and he greatly valued my support. I began finding moments for rest and relaxation. This helped me conserve my strength and not let the situation with Laura completely consume my life. Laura became somewhat less aggressive, but still threatened our harmony. I continued to work on my inner state and tried to find a balance between caring for Thomas and resolving conflicts. My life began to improve slightly, but dealing with Laura was still a significant challenge. I hoped that over time, the situation would get better. I continued to seek ways to improve my situation and maintain my emotional strength. This helped me stay positive despite the difficulties. My relationship with Thomas remained strong, and I was grateful for his support. It inspired me to keep fighting and not give up. I hope that in time, Laura would understand the importance of support and compassion. I tried to hold on to hope for a better future for our family. So I decided to continue my path, hoping that my efforts would not be in vain. I am sharing my thoughts and feelings once again, seeking support and advice from you, Reddit. Hello, Reddit. The situation in my life continues to worsen. With each passing day, conflicts with Laura become more frequent, and I don't know how much longer I can endure this tension. Every time Laura comes to our home, she brings with her a negative energy. Her lack of compassion and constant accusations make my life even harder. I remember how, just a few years ago, Laura was close to Thomas. They had a special bond, and Laura always supported her father during tough times. Now everything has changed. In flashbacks, I see how emotionally attached Laura was to her father. She helped him in many situations, and I thought her current indifference to his illness was just a temporary phase. Now, Laura shows genuine disdain towards Thomas. She not only ignores his needs, but also blames us for ruining her life with our problems. I try to remember the times when Laura was a support for her father, but these memories only highlight how much things have changed. Her current behavior seems completely alien to me. Every visit becomes a real trial. She demands attention and immediately criticizes me for taking care of Thomas. This creates a great deal of tension in our home. Laura constantly says that because of our problems, she cannot live her own life. She refuses to understand that we are doing everything possible to ensure Thomas's comfort. In one of our recent arguments, she accused me of ruining her plans for the future. This was unfair and painful, as I am trying to keep the family together, despite all the difficulties. I have started to notice that Laura clearly has emotional issues. Her selfish behavior might be a manifestation of her own internal conflicts and anxieties. I decided to try to understand what might have caused such a change in her behavior. Perhaps it is related to personal problems that I had not noticed before. Reflecting on past moments, I remember how Laura supported her father during difficult periods. Her support back then was genuine, but now it feels like all of that is just a thing of the past. I started looking for possible reasons behind such a change in Laura. Perhaps she feels abandoned or is under pressure from her own problems, which forces her to avoid genuine emotions. Attempts to talk to Laura about her behavior have been fruitless. She continues to treat us with contempt and refuses to acknowledge her share of responsibility for the situation. My conversations with her often end in conflict. I try to be patient and understanding, but each new conflict drains more and more energy from me. I began to feel like the situation is getting out of control. My emotional stability is hanging by a thread, and I can't find an effective way to deal with Laura. The psychotherapist I consulted noted that my stress might be due to my inability to control the situation with Laura. This gave me some insight, but it didn't solve the problem. Laura has become the source of frequent tears and worries. I try to keep myself together, but her behavior constantly wears on my nerves. I'm trying to find ways to calm down and restore my emotional balance. This includes time for myself, meditation, and walks, but even that doesn't always help. Laura constantly finds new reasons for conflicts. Her demands and requests seem endless, and I can't handle the pressure. One day, I decided to try an honest conversation with Laura to clear the air. I wanted to understand what's behind her aggression and indifference. Unfortunately, the conversation turned out to be very difficult. Laura once again accused us of making her life unbearable and not giving her the chance to live normally. She insisted that we should be grateful that she even bothers to visit. This left me with a deep sense of disappointment and injustice. My attempt to set healthy boundaries with Laura ended in yet another argument. I felt like I no longer knew how to stop this endless cycle of negativity. I began seeing my therapist more frequently, hoping to find ways to cope with the situation. I needed to find a solution that would allow me to maintain my emotional stability. One of the options I discussed with my therapist was the possibility of setting boundaries and gradually reducing contact with Laura to lessen the stress. I decided to try this approach, hoping it would help ease the tension in our family. This meant I needed to be clearer in my demands and set certain limits. Laura reacted very negatively to this. She began accusing us even more of ignoring her and not giving her the attention she needs. I tried to explain my motives and clarify that this was necessary to preserve my mental health. But Laura only escalated the conflicts. Each day, I felt more and more drained. My emotional resilience was at its breaking point, and I knew I needed to find a way to handle the situation. I began considering more drastic measures, such as temporarily cutting off contact with Laura to give myself time to recover. This decision was very difficult because I didn't want to lose my connection with Laura. But I understood that my own health and mental well-being had to come first. Laura started realizing that I was serious and prepared to take action if the situation didn't improve. This added new conflicts, but I tried to remain calm. I knew I needed to find a balance between caring for Thomas and maintaining my own mental health. It was a challenging task, but I was ready to keep fighting. My relationship with Thomas became even more important to me. I cherish every moment we spend together, and it helps me stay strong internally. I continue to seek support from friends and family. Their words and advice help me stay on the right path and not lose faith in myself. Laura remains a significant source of stress. I can't allow myself to lose hope entirely or give up, even if it feels very difficult. I'm trying to find the positive aspects of my situation and focus on what I can control. This includes creating an action plan and maintaining emotional balance. Your support and advice would be very helpful to me. I hope that together we can find a way to resolve these issues and improve my situation. Thank you to everyone who reads and comments on my posts. Your words help me stay on the right path and hold on to hope for better days ahead. Hello again, Reddit. The situation with Laura and Thomas has reached a critical point. Everything that's happened can no longer be ignored, and I finally made a tough decision that changed our lives. After another visit from Laura, during which she blatantly stated that she doesn't care about her father's illness and that it only inconveniences her life, I realized I could no longer tolerate this situation. Laura was openly aggressive, and her words were filled with indifference. I felt that this indifference and coldness had gone beyond what I could bear. It seemed to me that I could no longer work on maintaining relationships that only harm both me and Thomas. I decided it was time to act. I told Laura directly that she could no longer come to our home until she understands that her behavior is unacceptable. It was a painful decision, but it was necessary to protect my own well-being and Thomas's peace of mind. Laura's reaction was explosive and aggressive. She tried to defend her right to be part of her father's life, despite the destructive nature of her behavior. Thomas, despite his difficult physical and emotional state, supported my decision. It was a tough moment for both of us, but his support was crucial for me. After the incident, I felt immense relief but also deep internal conflict. I knew I did what was needed, but guilt still weighed on me. I decided to reach out to my therapist, Dr. Lynn, to work through my feelings and manage the internal conflict. I needed to understand whether I truly made the right choice. Dr. Lynn helped me realize that my decision was driven by the need to protect my mental health and Thomas's well-being. We discussed how important it is to set boundaries to maintain inner peace. The therapy helped me understand that I am not responsible for Laura's choices. Her actions and behavior are her own responsibility. I started feeling less guilty about my decision, recognizing that my actions were necessary to maintain harmony and health in our family. That was very important for me. Our family situation remained tense, but I finally felt like I could focus on taking care of Thomas and reduce the stress that Laura brought into our lives. I also tried to find new ways to support Thomas. I introduced new activities that could ease his condition and make our lives a bit lighter. My closest friend, Sarah, was a tremendous support during this difficult time. Her advice and simply being there helped me stay afloat. Sarah and I often discussed the situation, and she helped me realize that my decision was painful but necessary. Her support was invaluable to me. I began to regain my strength and find new ways to cope with stress. This included exercising, meditating, and taking more time for myself. With each passing day, I felt myself growing stronger. My emotional health began to recover, and I became more confident in my choices. The support from friends and family also helped me better navigate the situation. I felt less alone in this difficult process. Meanwhile, Laura continued to question my decision, but I no longer allowed her criticism to affect me as much as it did before. I decided that I would no longer respond to her messages and calls that only heightened my stress. I needed to focus on my well-being and Thomas's health. Over time, I started noticing improvements in my life. Although the issues with Laura didn't disappear, I found a new balance and was able to enjoy moments with Thomas again. I continued working on my mental health and searching for ways to improve our situation. This included both physical and emotional aspects of my life. I also made efforts to strengthen my relationship with Thomas, focusing on the quality of our time together. This helped us reconnect and feel supported once more. Laura seemed to realize that her behavior had serious consequences. We didn't communicate directly, but she sometimes sent brief messages of apology. I tried to keep an open line of communication, but without pressuring her from my side. I was ready to give her a chance to change if she was willing to work on herself. From time to time, I received messages from Laura in which she acknowledged her mistakes and asked for forgiveness. It was encouraging, but I remained cautious. I continued to work on myself and my emotional resilience. This experience taught me the importance of self-care and maintaining my own well-being. Therapy remained an essential part of my life. I worked on managing my emotions and finding new strategies to maintain harmony within the family. I realized that to keep peace and balance, one must be able to make difficult decisions. This helped me start a new chapter in my life. My experience showed me how important it is to be honest with yourself and your needs. It's not always easy, but it's necessary to preserve your own health and the well-being of those close to you. I continue to monitor the situation with Laura, hoping for positive changes. It's important for me to know that I'll be able to handle any new challenges that may arise. I remain grateful for the support I received from my friends and family. Their help was invaluable during this difficult time. The situation with Laura is not fully resolved, but I'm ready to move forward, maintaining my inner strength and peace. I know I can face any challenge if I stay true to myself. My experience taught me many important lessons about myself and my boundaries. I hope these lessons will help me become stronger and wiser in the future. I continue working on my personal growth and development to be the best version of myself. This involves not just physical, but also emotional work. I hope my story can help others who are facing similar situations. It may be a difficult path, but support and understanding can make it easier. I continue to find positive moments in each day and cherish the time spent with Thomas. This helps me stay focused on what truly matters. Your support and advice have meant so much to me. I thank everyone who helped me navigate this difficult situation and stay strong. Thank you for reading my story. I hope you find inspiration and strength in your own life challenges. Your comments and support mean the world to me.